Hello everybody and welcome to another Arkham Horror video. It's another core comparison where we are going to now our fourth class comparing the original revised core. Well, it's not really the original core, it's the revised core. You know how it is. To core 2026, which is coming out in a few months' time. Actually, even shorter, like a month's time from the time this video goes up, which is kind of crazy. I'm going to look at the cards in the OG core set, and then I'm going to talk about the cards in the new core set and kind of see where we think they are going to be for giving a good foundation for the Rogue class individually. So we're not going to look at like specifically Trish Scarborough, who can play with Rogue and Seeker. I'm looking at just like the health and power level and usability of the Rogue class. So we have Staple. These are cards that are like always good and are very rarely replaced or priority upgrades. You're just going to see them in a lot of decks that you play. Strong, universally used, are close to Staple, but not on the same level, in my opinion, which is my opinion, of they don't hit that Staple level, but they're still very good cards. Good cards are good cards that are good, exactly what it says on the tin. They'll provide a good impact when they're played. You're going to want them in your deck, but you're not going to make it like a priority in your mulligan, or like they might be part of your deck's plan, but not like the things that are like the star of your deck. But they are just good cards that provide a very good base for your deck. Strong, narrowly used are cards that are strong, but they're not used like in a lot of decks. They might be used in like 2 or 3 decks, or alternatively, like a good example of this is Old Book of Lore, which is an incredibly powerful card, but like pretty much only in Daisy Walker, and sometimes people play it in Mandy Thompson, right? But it's so strong in that deck that like the card is not a bad card by any means. So it's kind of like one of those things where it's like fine, but good for other people. So that's why it's between like good and fine. Fine. These are cards that are fine. These are cards that when you're building your level 0 deck, you're going to use them to hold space. Or they're going to be cards that are good at the start of your collection, but as you start getting more and more packages, and more boxes, more and more player cards, they'll eventually fall out of grace and power, and you're not going to really play them anymore. And then we finally have Space Waster. These are cards that waste space. They just take space in your binder. They are there to just kind of like, no one really knows why. They're just kind of there to be a paperweight. I mean, like, they are the weight, they are the paper that the weight is on, right? Like, they're not really anything. They just, like, literally waste space. Before I get into the Rogue class individually, I think it's only fair that we talk about the Rogue class and how they had a very rough go of it in their OG core. And they had the biggest room for improvement compared to all the other classes that existed in this game when it came to this new core. Do I think that they've improved? Yes. It would be very hard for them to not improve. But I think they did not improve as much as I was hoping they would. But I'm going to withhold that judgment until we get to the end. But I do think that overall, we can take a moment and we can laugh at the old Rogue class and be like, ha ha ha, you stinky, right? Let's take a moment and do that, everybody. Ha ha ha, Rogue, you used to be stinky. And now let's do this. 41 Derringer, uses 3 ammo as an action, spend 1 ammo, fight, you get +2 fist for this attack. If you succeed by 2 or more, this attack deals +1 damage. So I'm not going to talk about Tony Morgan here because he changes these. I'm going to talk about these specifically to the Rogue class generally. And unfortunately, the Derringer was a space waster. So what makes this card bad? Because like I know people have played this card like Tony Morgan and also Michael McGlenn, and they've been like, it's fine until I get to the upgraded version, right? Well, succeeding by 2 or more was actually pretty difficult in the early game because you had to spend a lot of resources or cards to get there, and you honestly would just want to play the machete instead. Even in Schizo Tool, which is not advisable over playing like, you know, like Roland Banks with the machete, but like even Schizo Tool would want to bring the machete out more. To the point where, like, even this 41 Derringer, the level 0 version, you're really only playing it consistently in Michael McGlenn and Tony Morgan, and that's just because they are rogues with 5 fist, right? Like even Leo Anderson, who plays rogue guns, isn't going to be pulling out the 41 Derringer. Rogues had such a choke on their weapons that like the Mauser, which is a very good gun, it's a very good firearm, was like a breath of fresh air to the class. They were like, oh, we could shoot. We have a gun that isn't ass. And I think that the level 0 41 Derringer unfortunately just wasted a bunch of space. The upgraded version, the level 2 version, is not a space waster. As an action spent on ammo fight, you get +2 fists for this attack. If you succeed by 1 or more, this attack deals +1 damage. Once per turn, if you succeed by 3 or more, you may take an additional action this turn. So, this one is not, like, glowingly better. Like, to me, it's between, like, fine and good. So, like, yeah, this is going to sound really mean for 41 Derringer. If this was good, narrowly used would be the most perfect place to put the 41 Derringer. Because that's where it was for like the majority of the time, and it still is kind of there. It has improved a lot with the card pool, and like more investigators are able to tap into it. I think that ultimately, though, just because, oh man, but it sucks so much to only succeed by 1. I'm gonna put it in fine. Because I think I'm getting slightly tainted by Tony Morgan and Michael McGlenn. But I think as a whole, this, like the 41 Derringer, didn't really make a lot of noise in the card pool until we started to see those other guys. And even in normal skids, you're not really fighting with this one so consistently. Like, I think most of the time you would rather take the Mauser and have an upgraded, like the Mauser and have like a guaranteed shot at 2 damage, because that's kind of like the important part of combat. So I'm going to put it in fine. And I think the reason for that is because good narrowly used is where I would like to keep this, but there is no good narrowly used, so I think that makes it slide down into fine here. Lockpicks. 3 costs, 1 experience, uses 3 supplies. If Lockpicks has no supplies, discard it. As an action, exhaust Lockpicks, investigate, add your foot value to your skill value for this investigation. If you do not succeed by at least 2, remove 1 supply from Lockpicks. Lockpicks, however, is a staple. It could be strong universally used at this point in the game's lifespan, right? My gut says staple. I mean, it's one of these two. It's probably strong universally used. I think realistically is a better place for it. I feel like a staple. So like unlike Guardians and Seekers, I feel like a staple in the rogue class needs to be used by fighters and cloovers. I think that makes sense, and I think that's fair, right, chat? I think that is kind of a better place for the staple where like a card that exists that takes up the accessory slot that may or may not be in Core 2026, I think is a good example of a staple rogue class card, right? So I'm going to put this one in strong universally used. This, if you did not play from the beginning of Arkham Horror the card game, this was a game changer in terms of what rogues were able to do and how they were able to impact the game. It being reprinted in the revised core was huge for the rogue class, because it allowed you to actually like start getting stuff done. I'm pretty sure Skids was able to investigate at 7 with it, which is actually a usable number, so you're able to do a flex skid outside of the box, which was a lot better than whatever Skids was in the first OG, like old core. So great card. I'm gonna miss it. Switchblade, 1 cost, fast, fight. If you succeed by 2 or more, this attack deals +1 damage. Takes up the hand slot too. It's a weapon. This card's really bad. It has all the problems of the Derringer. It sacrifices it in terms of, you know, it's fast. It's 1 cost, so it's like takes out very little to get there. It's not good. It's not good. Even if you're playing Tony Morgan, and you want the upgraded Switchblade, it's going to be a priority upgrade, so you're going to like run for it pretty quick, right? It's not reliable. Like with skids, you're fighting at 3, and you're trying to like at a certain point, and I think it was because of the machete, the game came about damage needs to be 2 for it to be worth it, right? And this card was 1 damage, and I think that they wanted 1 damage to be okay. They wanted 2 damage to be a reward, but unfortunately Machete right in the core box taught the players that 2 damage was the norm, and like everything kind of cascaded around that from the design afterwards, because it kind of became more interesting for them to be able to make monsters and enemies that were 3 health, and then being able to kill it in 2 actions felt nicer than like 3 actions. And I think that they wanted this unreliability, but I think unfortunately just the core set already changed that from the get-go. So Switchblade, it's stinky. Cat Burglar. I think this is one of a very strong card that is very rarely played. I'm going to put him in good because he's not universally used. He's not even narrowly used. I think he's just a good card. 4 cost, 1 experience. You get +1 foot. As an action, exhaust him, disengage from each enemy, engage with you, and move to a connecting location. This action does not provoke attacks of opportunity. That's a very powerful ability on an ally card. So I think what the big thing that really made Cat Burglar kind of just like not exist was that for the longest time, foot didn't really matter, right? Like Treacheries didn't target it as much as Brain because we went from Dunwich Legacy into Path to Carcosa. And then when we went into the Forgotten Age, when foot started to matter, we got Lola Santiago, who is one of the best allies in the game, right? So Catbug never really had a time to show off and shine and really like show what he was capable of, right? And I think that's made it so that people kind of often overlook Cat Burglar, but anytime Cat Burglar hits the table, it's always impressive. So I think he's a good card. Leo DeLuca, 6 cost. You may take an additional action during your turn. This guy's probably the staple, right? If there was a staple in the core set, it would be level 0 Leo DeLuca. While I'm not really like super excited, to play Leo DeLuca, because I think that you ultimately can outvalue the game with other allies. I think its mark on the card pool is very noticeable, and I think he is still very good and very playable today. I feel like at this point now he's better played outside of the rogue class, right? Like if you're playing him as a rogue splash, or like I recently played him in Parallel Jim Culver. Like the actions in classes that don't get actions so easily, I think Leo DeLuca is more impactful. And I think that might be why I scaled down on him a little bit, because like I think other people just like do it better than him at this point. I think he is still just like still very playable. And when economy got better, this guy became like very much easier to put in and like pay for without having to do the thing which I've seen happen so many times, where you pay 6 resources, gain a resource on your first turn, play him, take 2 actions, and then lose him. So yeah, I think he's still very good. I had a good impact from the start of this, and I think he's still played in a full collection, so he deserves the staple spot. But I think overall, I think other allies beat him in the long run, but I still think he is a very powerful guy. So he's definitely a staple, definitely a very good ally. Weird question. Do you think Cat Burglar would see more play if he had to use a unique ally with a name? 100%. More personality makes the characters feel like you want to play them more. And by nature, I think that there is a subconscious feeling where if an ally does not have a unique name, they are expendable. So it's one of those things where you don't imagine cat burglars sticking around. Like the same way like you do with B-Cop. Like a B-Cop eventually is going to kill himself down, right? I think it's a mental thing for sure, but it's funny. It's funny. I never thought about that, but I think you're 100% on that one. Yeah, Leo DeLuca, definitely the staple. His upgraded version, I think, is strong and universally used. I think in the early part of Arkham is something that you would want to prioritize upgrading, because being able to play him off your mulligan was really good. But I think that now, as I mentioned, that as economy got better, experience matters more because there's more experience cards as well. So I think he's less of a priority. If someone got into the final scenario with Leo DeLuca 0 over Leo DeLuca 1, I'd be like, I get it. Nothing wrong with that. Burglary. Let me just scroll back down to the bottom here. It's a space waster. 1 cost, action, exhaust it, investigate. If you succeed in discovering clues, gain 3 resources. So it's kind of really funny, right? Because this card actually reads pretty good. Like, it reads pretty, like, it's like, this is a dependable form of economy, right? Like, when you just read this card, you look at this and you're like, yeah, this actually is okay, but it's never really seen play outside of, as Volkglas is saying, like Rex Murphy, right? Because he could still get the clue with it, so it's basically just a basic investigate action that he gets 3 money on as well. Because Dexter's like, Rex's ability is like an additional clue, right? Like, you know, it's not an additional clue, you discover a clue, right? Because that's how that works, right? But this card is just like not the way. There was just something about it. And I think, again, it falls down to the fact that their first 2 investigators, I think, dropped the rogues off on a horrible spot because they had 3s in their do something stats. And, like, those numbers were good. Those numbers were good in, like, theory, but they never really followed through with the design. I've seen it to great effect in Lucius with the 4 different action cards. Okay. I will also say, as like, because this happened in one of the comments on the previous video, when I put a card in Fine or Space Waster, and there were some comments who were like, but I've seen it or I've used it here. Just because it's in the heading of Space Waster doesn't mean the card is unplayable. I have played every Arkham card, and while some cards are deemed unplayable, it doesn't mean that they are truly unplayable, but they are given the blanket of unplayable because compared to other things, they are unplayable. There are a few cards that I do legitimately believe are unplayable, but I don't believe Burglary is one of them. But there's no amount of money that someone can pay me to call Burglary a fine card. By the way, that's an absolute lie. I would gladly take, like, even $100 to say Burglary is fine. Yeah, it's like, because I played like a Burglary Bob Jenkins deck that was very fun. But it's one of those things. So just so people know that, like, I'm not saying these cards are unplayable, but in the blanket of terms, compared to the stuff around it, it kind of is. Hard Knocks. I think that this card was also a space waster. I think it was like one of those things where it was playable at the start, but it very quickly fell off. This is crazy. I don't want to, Chad, do I need to talk about these talents again, or can I just move on? That was something that I really liked about being so far away from the core set, is that these talents, I didn't have to think about them anymore, but now I have to be like, so this is bad because your money is better spent on cards that impact the game as opposed to helping you just, like, pass a test, right? So I think I'm going to just say that and say that this card is a space waster. I think it was fine when it was just this and you needed something, especially with, like, Jenny Barnes. But I think pretty quickly, level 0 Hard Knocks, space waster. Pickpocketing. I think you're 100% right on that, Dice Gods. I think they're good to start right now, the new talents. These ones for people, like Silver Tongue. But I think that they're going to fall off on your collection pretty quick as well. Alright, Pickpocketing. 2 cost, activate an enemy, exhaust Pickpocketing, draw a card. I think Pickpocketing is a good card. I think Pickpocketing 2 is a phenomenal card. But this is just card draw for an action that rogues want to take. I think it pretty quickly became some value when, like, I mean, Skids would play this in the core set, right? Finn started to really love this card because ability is now also red draw card. I think that Pickpocketing is pretty good. Backstab, I think, is another good card. I might be on the fringe with my thoughts on this card. So I'll kind of talk about it. 3 cost, fight. This attack uses foot instead of fist. This attack deals +2 damage. Like, this is a very big amount of damage to drop on an enemy in one action, right? And it's with the skill that the rogues are good with, right? But I've never liked Backstab. And that might be because of my playstyle and how I aim to solve my problems in a game of Arkham, right? Like, that could be how I'm approaching the logic for that, right? Like, it's just like a vibe-based thing. But I think as a whole, it's because it's, yeah, whole helicopter, that's a big part of it. It's cost 3, and, like, you don't really get a boost out of it, right? When I think it actually has a very similar sort of space to this decisive strike that we're going to talk about in the future. But I don't think it's a bad card. I just personally don't think it's a strong card. I've been impressed when people have used it, but they have to put a lot of resources into it. And that's kind of like where I find, like, the good card. Like, it requires, like, other things to, like, really make it pay off. I think it's a well-designed card and well-balanced card, but I think as a whole, for me, personally, just a good card. Definitely playable. I've seen people play it a lot. I've played it a few times. Yeah. That's all I gotta say. Elusive. This is an interesting card. And I don't really know how to talk about this card. So this card got tabooed. And we're going to kind of talk about I have the original version here, but we're going to kind of also talk about, like, the taboo version, because the taboo was just, like, connecting location, which was a lot better for a level 0 card. I think as a whole, the card's probably good, right? Taking the taboo into account with this for people watching at home. Because I think that, I mean, that's the way that I primarily play. And I think it's the way that the majority of the Arkham community primarily plays. And yeah, even when it's tabooed, I think it is still good tech, right? I'm here for it. I don't really have much to say as well. Like, it's not an exciting card. Like, that's the thing, right? Like, if you look at, you put a thumb over lockpicks and, like, even the upgraded Derringer, right? These are cards that didn't really do anything. Like, Backstab does. Like, that's the only card that actually, like, does something here in the good category, right? And I think this kind of really sums up to why Rogue had some issues, is that their cards didn't really do anything. So now that they're going to start getting cards that do something, maybe they're looking better off, right? Hot Streak, 3 cost, 4 experience, gain 10 resources. So this might be controversial, what I'm about to do. I think that this card is fine. I think that this card fits the definition of fine, where when you have a small collection and this is your best economy, you're going to take it, right? But why would I want to do that when, unless I'm a big money deck, I can just like stay with Faustian Bargain, right? Why not just play Faustian Bargain? Why not just play Watch This, right? Why not just play Pickpocketing 2? Why not just play Hot Streak 2, right? It's one of those things where I think that it's just outclassed by everything around it. For a long time, you played this card out of necessity, not because you wanted to, because it represented, in theory, 5 actions for Schizo Tool, right? But I think in actuality, as the card pool got bigger and economy eventually got better, no one's really chomping at the bit to play Hot Streak 4. Even Hot Streak like 2 is like still, I'm only playing that in big money decks. So even like for the best case scenario, that's going to live in like the strong narrowly used. So yeah, I'm going to drop this one here down into the fine category. And with all that said, I actually don't think it's a problem that Hot Streak got power crept. I think economy should be good because the game is a bit more interesting when your economy is good. I think at a certain point, economy became too good. So I'm hoping they can kind of pull it back a little bit. But I do think that Hot Streak ultimately got outclassed as the game got bigger. Sneak Attack, deal 2 damage to an exhausted enemy at your location. I think it's fine. I played it a lot back in the day, but I don't really touch it as much anymore. I play the upgraded version sometimes, but I'm less inclined to play the Sneak Attack. I'm only playing Sneak Attack in like 2-player decks when I need like a panic button in my lower level decks to just start killing some things. I think it's a fine card, but I think you upgrade out of it as the game goes. I think at a certain point, I probably would have called this card good, right? But I think at this point now, not so much. Just as like the card pool got bigger. Like I said, I think the upgraded version is fine because that's just like deal 2 damage to an enemy not engaged with you. You can just like move into location and go like, hi-ya! But yeah, so I'm going to just put it there. Great icons, though. Great icons. Sure, this is Sure Gamble. 2 cost, 3 experience. Perfect Chuck card? Am I learning a new word? What the hell's a Chuck card? A card you commit? 2 cost, 3 experience. Fast. Play after you reveal a Chaos token with a negative modifier. Switch that token's minus to a plus. Oh, Chuck Fergus! That's so funny! Oh my god, that's on me, chat. That one's on me. That that is honestly, that is really funny. You guys got me with that one, and you weren't even trying to get me, which makes it even funnier. Honestly, I'd love to see Chuck Fergus promoted to an investigator. That's a great idea. Sure Gamble. I think it's a good card. Yeah. I'll put it there. I don't think it's strong or universally used. I think it's just good. It's a bit expensive experience-wise, but I brought it to a recent campaign and I was like, yeah, this still shows up. Bryn brought it to a recent campaign, and I was like, oh yeah, this is impressive. But yeah. Are we doing every rogue card? No, we're doing all the core set rogue. We're comparing the old core to the new core and kind of making predictions about the new core while looking back at the old core cards to see where they kind of fell into the legacy of things. Opportunist is bad. Space Waster, goodbye. No one likes you except for Winifred. Actually, technically, I'm playing you tomorrow, but don't worry about it. We're going to still, this card's bad though. Bad card. Succeed by 3 or more, return it to your hand. I think the theory of this card is good. I think it definitely should have been 2 or more from the start. I think if we had this card released today with the exact same intention behind it, it would be the 2 or more version at level 0. And I don't think it would have been too strong. Yeah, I think that this is bad card. So, as we can see, the Rogue class has a lot that's living at the bottom. And it has, I think, are the most Space Wasters of every one of our things. So yeah, Guardian Revised had 3. I can show this again. Guardian Revised had 3. Seeker Revised had 3. Survivor Revised had 3. So this had 2 more. Survivor did have a lot in the fine category, but it was one of those things where like the Survivor investigators were powerful, so the cards didn't matter as much. And like the rogue ones, they weren't that powerful, so the cards mattered even more, right? And damn, next 53 months of the Golden Table. Rogue did get cooked, but let's see how they're going to be going forward. So one thing to keep in mind before we get too deep into this is that this video is entirely predictive. Like this tier list here. I don't know where things are going to be. I'm basing entirely just off hunches and the ARKHAM Horror card game knowledge I have. I am happy to be wrong, but my hope is that I can look at these in a few years and see how things went. So as I mentioned earlier, do I think that the Rogue class has improved? And I think they have, in the sense that I think they're going to have less Space Wasters. But I think as a whole, I wish there was more for the Rogue class in the core. So I'm very curious to see the Investigator starter decks, because I think that's where the true beauty and power might come from. So let's start with the M1903 Hammerless. This is a 3-cost asset, takes up the hand slot, uses 4 ammo, spend 1 ammo as an action to fight with your foot. If the target enemy is exhausted, this attack deals +1 damage. So how do we really feel about this weapon? Like if this card came out in the core set, how would we feel about this weapon? If this card came out with Schizo Tool? Because that's going to kind of be where I want to start. It is good enough to do the thing. Yeah. It is good enough to do the thing. I need to check something. Sorry, I'm deep in the tank. I'm going to put it in fine. Where would I put the 25 automatic? I'd put the 25 automatic in fine. The level 0, it's a priority upgrade to me to make the other version if I'm going to be running it, right? I'm not really looking at playing 25 automatic 0. I think that this card is playable, but I think that it's going to be clunkier than it reads on the tin in practice. I think it's going to be one of those things where it sounds really nice and it looks really nice, and then suddenly you draw a 4-foot enemy and you're like, oh, fuck. You know, that's kind of like the thing where, like, I think it's like, I mean, Trish can use it pretty good, and like that's nice for Trish. Let me just say this right now, and this is my problem with the Rogue core that I personally have as a player. They should have included an upgraded version of this instead of Sticky Fingers. The Sticky Fingers, in my opinion, is just, it's not good enough. It's not good enough to be a core set slot, you know? I think that the level 0 Rogue stuff is, for the most part, pretty good. But I think the upgraded Rogue cards have really kind of like faltered, which is why I'm very excited to see the player cards in the Andre Patel deck. Yeah, like I mean, that's a great point, right? Having to spend your foot icons in both the evade and the attack is a bit tough, because maybe you have a 2 health, a 2 evade enemy, but what if he has 4 attack? Or what if it's a 2 attack enemy, but he has 4 evade, right? Like that's like the real sticky part of this, and that's why like my gut is telling me I think this card is playable. But I think you're going to be prioritizing, like, if a better gun comes out in the Andre Patel deck or the first cycle of player cards we get, M1903 Hammerless is going to hold space until that comes there. I think the card is playable. Like, I'm gonna enjoy playing it in Winifred Habamuck, right? But I do think that it is, as a whole, I think this card is going to be less impactful than it seems on the tin. And that's what my heart of heart tells me, and that's why I'm following. And honestly, I convinced myself during this. Thieves Kit. Yo, that's a good-ass card. I don't think it's strong or universally used, but I do think that this is a good card. 3 cost, uses 6 supplies, takes up a hand slot. As an action, spend 1 supply, investigate with your book or foot, and before anyone asks, you could do that with the original version as well. If you succeed, gain 1 resource. I think that this is a very healthy card for the Rogue class. And I think that this shows the real nice flexibility that Rogue should have. And I think that they're showing this as well with the Hammerless and also Decisive Strike, where Rogue can kind of use what's best for them in the moment. And I think that this is really nice. I think it's a fine economy card to kind of like pay itself back and get a little bit more if things go really well. I think that it's going to be really good with prestidigitation as we get to that. Trish, she can use whichever version is this. She can use, I mean, there's not too many things she can use here, right? I mean, I don't know, maybe something with out of sight, right? But I think like she can use deduction for 1. I mean, she can switch from manual decks to perception. She has going that for her, right? I think that this is a really nice piece for rogues to have in their pool and their pie. It's here and it's not going anywhere. Please don't print level 3. Do not print lucky cigarette case number at level 3. Please do not do that. Please do not do that. Please do not do that. Level 0 lucky cigarette case, I think, is a perfect card. 2 cost, takes up an accessory slot. As a reaction, after you succeed a skill test by 2 or more, exhaust lucky cigarette case, draw 1 card. It's a staple. It is, I think, the perfect rogue staple, right? I can't think of like a more like staple rogue card than Lucky Cigarette Case 0. And I'm happy it's here. I know there's some people who have said that this makes the accessory slot more competitive. There's a great way to compete with Lucky Cigarette Case 0. And that's just to make cards that are like good enough to be played instead of Lucky Cigarette Case 0, right? I do like the change where Lucky Cigarette Case is the draw card and Sticky Fingers is the resource, right? Because I think that's healthier as a whole. I have some issues with Sticky Fingers that we're going to get to once we get to it. But that is just where I am with this. But I think Lucky Cigarette Case is nice to still be here. I will say, though, I personally think, at least with the card, how the card pool is in Legacy now, Lucky Cigarette Case is less of a staple than it was at the start, but I think it still isn't easily included in the staple tier. It's kind of a fun-looking tier list. Olivier Bishop. 4 cost, 2/1 soak, takes up the ally slot. You get +1 foot. As a lightning bolt during your turn exhaust, Olivier Bishop, move to a connecting location. Where is he? This guy's a staple. This guy's going to be played until the end of time. Great card, great ability. I do like the movement being in rogue class. It definitely feels like, I mean, like, Seekers still have movement in their class, but the rogue ones feel like they should be the ones who have the best movement. Like, Pathfinder should have been a rogue card from the start. I think it actually probably would have set up the game to be healthier if it was a rogue card from the start. I do think it was a design failure of having Pathfinder be in the Seeker class. It definitely should have been a rogue from the start. The +1 foot on a level 0 rogue ally is something that people have wanted for a long time, and I think having it in the core set, and as Beard has pointed out, there is a +1 stat for all of the classes, and then survivors get their health and sanity +1, kind of. So I think that that's like a very nice thing to have. Overall, this card's going to do a huge impact in every format, and I'll play him in a Clover or a Fighter, because he's just that damn good. Silver Tongue. Oh, the talents. I'm so excited to talk about this. 2 cost asset. Lightning Bolt. Spend 1 resource. You get +1 book for the skill test. +2 instead if it's a parlay or an evasion. And you get +1 foot or +2 for an evasion or parlay. So the evasion 1 mode is pretty nice for this, especially when you get the money back with Sticky Fingers. This one's probably fine, right? These are the things that, like, the talents I think are the ones that I'm most curious about how they're going to be. I think, like the originals, they're going to kind of be removed from your collection as you get more and more alternative options. That's kind of like my hunch for how these are going to go. I could be wrong with that, right? Like, I could be wrong. I haven't actually tried them out. Maybe they play better, and maybe like just like having 1 resource to get +2 for an evasion, like get a manual dex that doesn't draw, is really good. Like, I could definitely see that being a thing. So I'm gonna put him in fine right now, but there's like a little pin in this one to see how is it gonna go in the long run, right? This is how you get your 4 of 8 on the 4-foot enemies, so you can hammerless them. I mean, it's true. It is true in theory, right? Like, I know there's a kappa there, but this is technically a true statement. Sticky Fingers. I think this card is... Let's read it. 1 cost asset. Limit 1 per investigator. After successfully evade an enemy, exhaust Sticky Fingers, gain 1 resource. So pickpocketing is in the good tier. Back here, right? Pickpocketing is in the good tier. Pickpocketing is better than Sticky Fingers. Yeah, I'm gonna go out on a limb here. I'm gonna say something that's in my heart, and I need to say it. I think as a whole, the rogue cards aren't a massive improvement over the original core, But what makes all these cards look and feel better is that there is a competent investigator for the rogue class in the box. I don't think Sticky Fingers is that good. I can't put Sticky Fingers and Pickpocketing on the same tier. I just can't. I think Sticky Fingers is just fine. I think it's a fine card. You're going to want to upgrade out of it into not Sticky Fingers 2, I'll tell you that much. Yeah, I would play it in current with someone like Trish. Yeah, I think you would. But like that's the thing, like that's where the fine is, right? But you'll eventually be like, this needs to be something better, you know? Like, I mean, like, I think it's fine, and that's also just like some drip economy, but as soon as you get any better economy, like, why would I want to do this, right? Because, like, the draw is the good part of these cards is pickpocket, is the draw, right? The upgraded pickpocketing is good because you get an upkeep phase, right? Like, that's why it's good. And I feel like the upgraded version of Sticky Fingers, like, maybe cost 3 and gave you an upgrade. Also, we're just going to stop at Sticky Fingers 2 here. I think this one is an actual legitimate space waster. As I mentioned earlier, I wish this card was not here. I wish Sticky Fingers 2 just was not here. There's not enough of an improvement, in my opinion, for this card to be included, right? I would rather it, like, have more to it. Like, it just being fast is just, like, not enough. You know, like, it does have the 2 icons, which is relevant because you can only have one of these in play, right? But, like, I wish it was just something else. I wish it was just, like, something else, or, like, the card was better. This one was very weird when I saw it, because I was just like, I don't know. Like, when it got spoiled, I was just like, it doesn't really, like, do anything, like, that's worth the upgrade. You kind of just, like, upgrade it because it's there, and you're like, your upgrade pool is so small, right? I do think, yeah, this should have been an upgraded Hammerless that gave you +2 foot, right? I think that Sticky Fingers, and that's why I think I feel like it really wastes space. Or even if it was like, if it followed the thing where it's like, after you successfully evade an enemy, exhaust Sticky Fingers, gain 1 resource, 2 resources instead if you succeed by 3 or more. Like, why couldn't that have been on there, right? Like, that could have been on there, right? Like, that I think would have made this more of an enticing card. Like, they have the staple for the rogue thing, just put that on there, because that's what the Pickpocketing 2 had, right? Gain 2 resources instead if you succeed by 3 or more, you know? Do you think Another Day is Another Dollar is a space waster too? I think Another Day, Another Dollar is a playable card, but I do think that in the vibes, it wastes space. Yes. Once Travis said that he wishes these, the permanents were in the Investigator starter decks instead of the core set, I was like, you madman, you're 100% right with that. Like, that is the truth. Okay. That's not on Sticky Fingers. Let's go to Another Day, Another Dollar. Yo, I think this is a good card. But let me just talk about it. As I said, I think that this should have been in the starter decks, not the core set. Core sets, they're a whole different beast, where even though the original core set was designed alongside Dunwich, and it's very likely that this comes with like designed in kind of tandem and like in partnership with the Investigator starter decks. They still need to be standalone. So I wish that there was like some switches to kind of make that work better, to go along with that. I do think Another Day, Another Dollar is a good way to spend your experience, especially if you care about money. People talk about a lack of economy cards in this card pool. And I think that as a whole, it is kind of that way. But I think like Another Day, Another Dollar is the solution they're attempting to present with that, where like you start with 7 or 9. But I do think there's going to be probably more economy cards to come to kind of round it out. I think that just like, I think they made some very purposeful decisions for how they balance the cards and what cards they chose here. And I think as a whole, for every other class, except for maybe Seeker, I think they were successful. But I think in the Rogue class, it feels a little bit, I don't know, something feels off about it, and like my spidey sense is tingling. And I'm just like, there's something here I don't like, and I think it is Sticky Fingers, and to a lesser extent, Out of Sight. And also Another Day, Another Dollar. Breaking and Entering. Yo, this card is strong and universally used, baby. 2-cost event, investigate book. Add your foot to your book for this investigation. If you succeed by 2 or more, you may automatically evade an enemy at this location. This action does not provoke tax opportunity. After you successfully evade. Not even evade. They could have just made that after you evade an enemy to work with breaking and entering. And then we would have been talking. Let's pivot away. Let's pivot away from the Sticky Fingers thing, because I think the cards that they chose to reprint in the core set were absolutely phenomenal choices. I think Thieves Kit, Breaking Entering, and Lucky Cigarette Case are perfect representations of the Rogue class and what they were, and how they achieved good boosts of power over the game. So I think that's really good. This actually was a card that I'm probably the happiest was reprinted. I think that this is a phenomenal card, Breaking and Entering. The reason it's not going in Staple is because of the thing I mentioned in the last one, where I feel like the clue-getting Rogue and the fighting Rogue should use it. And I think that's true for these 2 cards, but not as much Breaking and Entering. Decisive Strike. 2 cost, 2 experience, fight with your fist. You get +2 fists to deal +1 damage to this attack. If this attack defeats an enemy, gain 5 resources. So this is another weird one that I think also adds to some of the confusion in the core set for the Rogue class, where this feels like it doesn't necessarily have a home, but I feel like this card is going to grow really well. I think this card is actually a very powerful card in the right hands. I just think right now, if we look entirely at Chapter 2, we don't really have the right hands, right? But like, Tony Morgan can go nuts with this card, you know? He fights a guy, kills him, walks away up 4 resources, right? So one of those things that I always like to talk about and try to push on players more is the idea of active economy. The strongest cards are the cards that reward you for doing what you are already doing. And Decisive Strike is one of those cards. So I'm flagging it right now that this card, I'm going to blow your minds, is good. It's not strong, universally used. It's not a staple. It's definitely better than fine. This card actually reminds me a lot of Backstab. But I do think that this card is very powerful. Any splash rogue is going to play the hell out of it. I'm going to go nuts with this card with Leo Anderson. Like he's salivating at that economy while also killing an enemy. If you zoom in the face of the guy in the yard, that is the face Joseph makes when it gets his economy while progress in the game state. You mean this guy up here, right? The guy in the top? Because the one in the front is me being like, oh, I took a basic resource action. For Marion Tavares, yep, Marion Tavares would like this card. Yep, that's a good shout. Yeah, I'm the guy with the pipe. No, for sure, 100%. Yeah. Good card. I think that I do think it adds to this kind of like weird conundrum with the Rogue core set, where it feels less engaging because there's no real home for it. But it's going to be a card that I think grows with the card pool, which to me are really nice cards to have in the long term, but maybe not so much in the short term. Guy in the front is the typical YouTube commenter, surely. No comment, but you brought peace to this 36-year-old man. Paint the Town Red. 0 cost event, parlay, search top 9 cards in the encounter deck for a non-elite enemy, draw it and gain resources equal to that enemy's printed health, shuffle the encounter deck. Okay. So this card has some upsides compared to Kicking the Hornet's Nest and some downside to Kicking the Hornet's Nest. Downside is it's a parlay, so that's an upside, but not really. The downside is that the enemy spawns somewhere, so you could potentially get free resources from this if you know a scenario really well. The downside is you don't get a clue, right? Like that's like, am I mixing up downsides and upsides again? Let's just talk about the card. Go back to my first thing about the spawn. Who cares what that is? This card doesn't get a clue. This card also is a little bit swingy, where you go through the deck and you find like a 2 health enemy and you're like, good, I drew an enemy for 2 resources. People play Kicking the Hornet's Nest mostly for the clue, and the resources are like a bonus. This card, you're playing for the resources, but you don't really get that bonus. I view this card as future parlay support. I think this card is not an economy card. I think this card is for those decks that want to find enemies because they are a parlay deck. I think with this in Silver Tongue, there is the implication that parlay is going to become more of a thing going forward, and it's just going to be something that the rogues and seekers, and I think to a lesser extent mystics, are going to do. In that order of priority. Primary rogue, secondary seeker, tertiary mystic. That's my prediction, and I'm making it here. But for the time being, I have a hard time already playing Kicking the Hornet's Nest. I actually think the card is pretty bad, except for some investigators. So I'm going to put this card in a space waster. In my opinion, right now, that's where I think Paint the Town Red is going to live. 2 out of 10, the town behind that guy is white and beige. Hey, you're right. It is white and beige. What the hell, guy? Okay. Prestidigitation. 1 cost event, fast, holding your turn, play an item asset from your hand, reducing its cost by 2. When your turn ends, return an item asset you control to your hand. This thing... yeah. That's funny, Beard. This thing is like Sleight of Hand, with some upsides, some downsides. Where you can return an item to your hand. So you can return any item to your hand. So you can like refill a Thieves kit to put something else into play. It doesn't need to be the item you return. Difference is also that you don't get a full free reduction. So you do have to pay a little bit for things that cost more than 2. But overall, I think this is going to be a strong and universally used card. I don't think it's going to be a staple, but I'll be honest. I could see myself being wrong about that. I could definitely see Prestidigitation becoming a staple card. I'm also very curious if this card is going to be tabooed. Because there was a lot of weird stuff that came out with Sleight of Hand. Where I'm curious to see if the similar problems arise or if it hurts designing as much as the first one did, because like they just play the Necronomicon, or if the new designers are just going to be like, who cares? Let them have fun, you know? Yeah, and Dexter can play 2 items with this fast, which is pretty good. Then return your Doom item back to your hand at the end of your turn. Ooh, feels pretty good. Feels pretty good. Yeah, great card though. I think it's going to be very, very impactful on the card pool going forward. Out of Sight. It's a skill, max 1 committed per skill test. If this test is successful by 2 or more, the performing investigator may disengage from each enemy and move to a revealed connecting location. I think that, like Survival Instinct, because this is practically Survival Instinct, I think that this is a good card. It's not really like exciting or fun and you might upgrade out of it, but you also might keep it the entire time, right? Like, you could see with their design ethos with Trish's, like, Finn Edwards ability is that the intention was that each evade, you're like just wringing value out of the game, right? Like, it's not like obvious free value apart from the free evade, but it's like the intention of like, what can I fucking squeeze out of this in terms of value? And I think like Out of Sight is an example of that. So it's one of those things where like it might drop down to a fine. Like, I can definitely see that being a thing. But I'm curious in the long term. I mean, like, because the 2 or more is a little bit like sticky. I'm not too sure. This one's hard to say. Like, it could be fine as well. But I think Survival Instinct is a good enough card that people generally don't play. But they could. Like, it's one of those things that just because people don't like evasion-style gameplay, but when they run into evasion-style gameplay, they look for cards like Survival Instinct. So that's why I'm thinking like the same thing for Out of Sight. The upgraded version, if this test is successful by 1 or more, the performing investigator may disengage from each enemy and move to a revealed connected location up to 2 connections away. I think a big thing for us to talk about is the fact that it's a revealed location. That really does limit how cards work. This is something that actually happened with a card that Beard and I designed, where all the playtesting notes we got from it were like, I wanted to play this card, but it was so awkward to only move to connecting revealed locations, right? And I think the similar thing is going to happen here with Out of Sight, where it's just going to be like slightly too awkward to play with. Guys, I kind of want to put this card in Space Waster. Is that controversial? It's probably fine. It's probably fine. Like, I see why you play this card. It's a good upgrade if you have nothing else to upgrade, you know? I'm going to put it up into fine. I don't think it's a Space Waster. I don't think it's on the level of these things. I could see myself upgrading into this, right? If there was a category for overcosted, and I think fine kind of lives there. And yeah, like 3 agility is, yeah, it covers most of the bag, you know? Ah. Interesting. So what do we got here? 2 staples, 2 straws. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 above the line, and 6 below the line. Guardian only had 3 below the line. Seeker had 4. Survivor had 2. So this is what I mean. Like, I feel like this the rogue pool isn't particularly great. However, I will say, to give some credit to these cards, rogue, by its very nature and design, are a combo class. So maybe this is going to be something that when we see the cards come together, we're going to be like, aha, you know? I think there is something that can be discovered here that isn't obvious until you guys start to get the cards into practice. But I think what ultimately weighs the card pool down for me is the weird choices on upgrades that I think could have been better if they were other cards. I understand that like upgraded cards are there to kind of give like a direction for players to upgrade their cards into, right? But I think that as a whole, newer cards, like new cards, are more exciting for new players because they can be like, ooh, what could this be, you know? But I don't think there's going to be any player who is like, I can't wait to upgrade my Sticky Fingers into a fast card, because that's just like not really that engaging, you know? As a whole, though, I think that what's important is that the top line power is very good, right? The top line power is very good, and the strong universally used is very good. And I think that that's going to be a real sticking point. But I also, as I said earlier, my theory, now that it's kind of just like come over me, is that rogues will feel better because their starting deck their starting box investigator is much better than Schizo Tool. She can just play Magnifying Glass and Magnifying Glass in their hands, and then like a Lucky Cigarette Case around her neck, and then like Sticky Fingers to get free resources, right? Like, yeah, it's one of those things where I think it's just a little bit weird. How much better do you think Skids would be if this was old Skids with his card pool? I think he'd be a lot better. Like, just Thieves Kit, Olivier Bishop, the Hammerless, right? Like, these are all massive improvements. Breaking and entering, he can still fuck around with, right? I think just already Olivier Bishop is already a huge boon to him, right? So, I think that this is going to be a weird card pool, and I'm very curious to see the starter decks as we go through this. And maybe I'll do a similar thing where it's not a core comparison, but maybe just like talking about my predictions for the cards from these starter decks. If you want to see that, you can let me know on Twitch, or if you're watching live right now, or on YouTube if you're watching the VOD when it comes out. But in the meantime, thank you so much for watching. My voice is starting to go away, so honestly, I'm kind of happy the video's done. We only have the Mystic one left to do, and the Mystic one is looking pretty sweet, if I'm not going to lie. Thanks for watching, everybody. Have a good one, and as always, a GG's.